ladies, please give a warm welcome to Arianna Huffington. You look absolutely beautiful, I must tell you.
You look very beautiful. Now, can you all hear me? Because you have to deal with my accent.
Yes.
So,
What accent, Arianna?
what accent? Let me see. Okay.
I think we got it together.
You got it together? If you can't hear, please shout.
I think we got it. All right, wonderful. So as I was saying to the ladies, I don't know how many people are like me, but I start my morning every morning with Huffington Post. Every single morning, I need to know what happened last night and what's going to happen today. And the Huffington Post really does sort of outline it for me. Publishing is really rapidly changing the media landscape. Where do you see it going, and how does it affect professional women?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with a group full of amazing professional women, because I really believe that this is our time, and this is our time not just to succeed in the male world, but to change it. And I feel that one of the most exciting things for me about running the Huffington Post is that we have this platform where we can have these important conversations. And that's one of the ways that the media landscape is changing. That it's no longer just about talking to the audience, it's about listening. It's interactive, it's a conversation. You know, will.i.am, that great sage,
Oh, yes.
put it best when he said that people used to consume news sitting on the couch, and now they consume news galloping on a horse. They don't just consume it, they share it, they pass it on. It's a very different experience, and that's what I love.
I always say that we used to digest the news, now we ingest the news. We bring it into our lives so that we can push it right back out to the world. You know, you, like so many women that are in this room, juggle many things. Would you share with us what you stress about and what you do to keep that at a minimum?
Well, first of all, for me, this has been a big journey. I have made a lot of changes in my life as a result of learning what I was not doing in the right way. And it happened actually with a bang. In 2007, I fainted from exhaustion. It was in the middle of building the Huffington Post. Those of you who started businesses or who are working really hard against a deadline on a project know what that's like. When suddenly you don't take care of yourself, you just work around the clock. So I was at the same time taking my oldest daughter through colleges, you know, the famous college tours, to pick a college she was going to go to. And our agreement was no blackberries, Mom. You know, I was just going to be entirely present for her. So at night, we would check into a hotel, she would go to sleep, I would start working. So I came back home exhausted, fainted, hit my head on my desk, broke my cheekbone, got 5 stitches on my right eye, and it was a huge wake-up call. It started me on this journey of rediscovering sleep, first of all.
I like that.
I'm now a sleep aficionado. I just really believe that one of the things we women need to change is the way sleep is perceived. Because for men, sleep deprivation is seen almost as a virility symbol. You know, you hear it's a macho thing. You know, I was having dinner with a guy recently and he bragged that he had only gotten 4 hours sleep the night before. And I thought to myself, I didn't say it, but I thought to myself, you know what, if you had gotten 5, this dinner would have been a lot more interesting.
How much sleep do you get a night?
I now unapologetically strive to get 7 to 8 hours sleep a night. Now, I don't achieve it every night, but that's my goal. I will leave events early. I will make appointments later if I can, because I know that when I wake up and I've had a good night's sleep, I'm just ready to take on anything. You know that feeling when you're in the zone, when you are basically bring it on, whatever it is, whatever the challenge, I can handle it. Isn't that a great way to live life? Rather than the other feeling, which I've also had many times, which is dragging yourself through the day, having your 6th cup of coffee, or your 2nd cinnamon bar, or whatever is going to keep you going.
Don't hate on the cinnamon bar, Arianna. The cinnamon bar will keep you up, you know? What it sounds like you are saying is you take time to regenerate Arianna every day.
Yes, and many times a day. In fact, we launched an app called GPS for the Soul.
Yes.
Which is free. You can download it from the App Store. I wanted it to be free because I wanted everybody to have it, because it's based on 2 truths. One is that we all have in us that place of strength, wisdom, joy, peace. And the second truth is that most of the time we are not there. But we all know that place. We all know it exists. So the truth is that we are never going to be there all the time. That's not the nature of life. But how can we get back there as fast as possible? How can we keep course correcting? So GPS for the Soul gives you a proxy for your stress level. You put your finger on the sensor of your iPhone, your camera sensor, and it reads your stress level. It gives you your heart rate variability. And then you launch a guide that helps you course correct. Now you launch your personal guide, which is very easy to make, that consists of pictures of your children, of your loved ones, poetry that you love, music that you love, whatever it is that brings you joy.
And then it tells you you need to kick in some of your stuff that you've put in here on your personal profile.
Exactly. You get alerts during the day. You can program it to give you alerts as often as you want. And then before you launch your own guide, there are prepackaged guides. Like you have my own guide that has a lot of pictures of my children when they were young and unproblematic. You know, Deepak Chopra, Dean Ornish, you know, a lot of expert guides that you can play. And the thing that I love is that you can share guides. I'd like to see your guide. And so sometimes, you know, instead of playing my guide, I may want to play your guide. Or you can play your friends' guides or your kids' guides. And it becomes like a social thing. And it's only under a minute. And now, you know, frankly, I don't really even care what my stress level is exactly. I know when I'm stressed. We all can feel it, right? We can feel it in our bodies.
Right.
So I go straight to the guide. And I play it, it's under a minute, and it immediately course corrects you. And this is like based on neuroscience, that it takes seconds for us to course correct. You know, have you ever walked down the street feeling depressed and miserable, and suddenly you see a rainbow, or a white kitten, or something that you love, and your mood changes?
That AT&T commercial that has all the little kids on it, and when the little girl says, oh, you're going to turn into a werewolf, and you're like, I wish I was human, I'm course corrected right away.
Exactly.
That's my favorite commercial on television.
That's perfect. So you should put that on your GPS
I
for
will.
the Soul guide. And I would love to invite you all, if you are doing guides, to share them. And we would love to post them on the Huffington Post. I'm going to give you all my email address right now. Are you ready? Arianna, with 1 R and 2 N's, at huffingtonpost.com. You see, when you're employee number 1 like Sarah, you get a good email address.
And she responds, by the way. You should know she does respond. I'll send her a note and I'll get something back in the middle of the night, okay? Now, listen, Arianna, I'm going to expose you a little bit on this because I am a big fan of this one thing. You believe in napping during the day. Please talk about that.
So at the Huffington Post, when we moved into our new offices over 2 years ago, I installed 2 nap rooms. And you know, we have 850 journalists, reporters, engineers, and at first people would say to me, you know, nobody's going to be seen going into a nap room in the middle of the afternoon. Now, they're full all the time. We need to start a 3rd one. And of course, the other day I was going by and I saw 2 people coming out of the nap room. So, you know, I thought to myself, whatever he charges you during the day, It's fine with me. Just don't tell HR, okay? But the idea
And as long
is,
as it's not a manager and a subordinate, we
Yeah,
can't have that.
exactly, yeah.
You know, the lawyer in me just jumps right in at
absolutely,
any time.
yes. But the key here is that, you know, a 20-minute nap can so totally recharge you. I'm sure it's all happened, even if you're on a plane and you get a 20-minute shut-eye and you are like good as new. And isn't that better than, again, going to food or to more coffee or whatever it is that we use as fuel?
Just recharge at that point.
Recharge. It's all about recharging. That's why what I've been writing about in response to Sheryl Sandberg's book, which is a very important book about leaning in, very important. What I have been adding is we also need to learn to lean back. Because you lean back, you recharge, you refuel, and then you lean in, reinvigorated. And that's when you can have your best ideas. Everybody we admire in this culture has talked about that in different ways. You know, yes. Steve Jobs, in his biography that Walter Isaacson wrote, he told Walter that the most iconic Apple products, his biggest successes, came after Zen meditation. He said after his mind was clear. You know, a lot of the day is spent processing our inbox, responding to emails. We also need time to recharge, and that's how we fuel our creativity, our wisdom. And you know, the higher you move in your business, in your profession, the more you're really paid for your judgment. So how can you keep that judgment clear? I mean, if you hire the wrong person, you know, you pay a price, you know, in time, in energy. If you don't fire somebody fast enough, all the decisions that you have to make as a manager are much better when we can tap into our own wisdom.
Absolutely, I agree. You know, you brought up Sheryl Sandberg and lean in, now we know lean back. I was also thinking about, I mentioned to the ladies earlier, Marissa Mayer and the edict that she is going to bring work back into the workplace and not allow as much working from home. Technology has allowed us the freedom to work from home, to have more flexible hours. Is this a good thing, bad thing? Are we losing ground? Because I know a lot of women depend on the ability to have flexible hours and a flexible work location.
I think that, as you said, with telecommuting,
yes.
with the fact that we can do a lot from home, it should be up to the manager and the employee. And we are very flexible. You know, if somebody has a sick child, if they have to deal with some emergency at home and they need to work from home, that is absolutely fine with us. We also believe that caring for you, the people who work for you as human beings, not just as people producing things, is key. So we have now started at the Huffington Post, for example, a meditation class a week, a yoga class once a week. We even have this fantastic breathing training, you know, learning to breathe. You know, we think we know how to breathe, but we don't. Most of us breathe in a very shallow way. And if you learn to breathe in a deeper way, it just, again, re-energizes you. So we make all that available, healthy snacks that are free. All these things are really an indication that we care for you as a human being. And if you're going through a tough time, if you've broken up with your boyfriend, and you know, so many people who work at the Huffington Post are so young, you know, they break up all the time. You know, tell your colleagues, tell the people you work with that you're going through a tough day, so they cut you some slack, so they can help you. You know, that's the kind of collaborative atmosphere that is very important, that we women are so much better at creating. You know, getting away from the sort of competitive, tough, burnout world that we've inherited from men. We basically have to go in and change that world. This is what is different for me. This is the third women's revolution. You know, the first one was the suffragettes and getting the vote. The second one was Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and saying, we want our place in the world. And the third women's revolution is, we want to change the world. It's screwed up.
Yes. That sounds very much like your passion.
Yes, I'm so passionate about it. You know, this world doesn't work for men, it doesn't work for women, it doesn't work for the economy. I mean, look at it. We still have 25 million people out of work, gridlock in Washington. You have smart people at the top making terrible decisions. Not because they don't have a high IQ, because they don't have any wisdom. I mean, look at the financial crash. You know, Lehman Brothers. If Lehman Brothers was Lehman Brothers and Sisters, they might still be around today.
Hello. You know, you hear so many women being enthusiastic right here because at its core, NAPW is a networking organization, and we are about women connecting with other women, so that you will get a cheer every time in this room. Do you think networking, specifically women networking together, is important? I blogged this morning at NAPW on the power of networking, and I do believe there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women.
Absolutely.
So, talk to me about networking and how important it is.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right about that. And also your blog, can you cross-post it on the Huffington Post?
Yes, see, she's working all the time. It's done immediately.
Perfect. You know, that's my favorite thing, having people recruiting new bloggers. We have over 40,000 now. I hope by the end of the month, you're all going to be Huffington Post bloggers. Just send it to me and we'll bypass the Huffington Post bureaucracy. So absolutely, I think that being able to help younger women is one of the things I love the most. I got so much help from all the women in my own career. I think this is key. It's really part of what makes our lives worth living, that it's not just about ourselves, it's about sharing what we learned. It's about sharing tips, it's about helping somebody along the way, and it makes a huge difference, and it always comes back 100-fold. That's the sort of great thing about life. When we live our lives from a sense of abundance, you know, I had this amazing mother, you know, who had no money. We lived in a one-room apartment in Athens. Her husband, you know, had been, my father was a great man, but a serial philanderer. You know, he was having affair after affair, and when my mother complained, he told her not to interfere in his private life. That was Greece for you. And so my mother took me and my younger sister and left. She had no money, she had nothing. And there we were. But she always made us feel rich. She was like, she had this thing one day, I remember my sister said to her, Mommy, are we poor? Are we rich? What are we? And she said, richness is not about money. You have a lot of people with a lot of money who are very poor inside, who are always operating from lack. She was always operating from abundance. And creating that is, in our lives is something that we have the choice to do any day. It's not a function of how we are doing at work or how successful we are. That's why Mika Brzezinski and I are organizing this conference that I sent you the invitation to, called Redefining Success, the Third Metric. Because men have equated success just with money and power, and that's not enough. You know, you have right now an enormous amount of very successful men and women who have destroyed their health on the way to the top. And that's why I think this is urgent for women, because the new data shows that among successful career women, there is a 40% higher incidence of heart disease and a 60% higher incidence of diabetes. We can't do success that way. It makes no sense. We have to redefine success so that it includes our own well-being. You know, I think success, you know, it's not just how much you're making. It's what is your cortisol level. You know, if you're stressed out, it doesn't matter how much you're making because you're going to pay a price. You know, you may not pay today, but you'll pay down the road because stress is incredibly toxic when it accumulates.
100%. There's never been a Brinks truck following behind a hearse that I've ever seen. So You can't take it with you no matter what.
Exactly.
You cannot take it with you. You've been so generous with your time. I always like to look back on all of the wonderful, fun things that have happened in my life, but I always know that there are pivotal moments that a great success or even a great mistake or failure can impact. And we'd like to know, was there a pivotal moment, either a very, very high, high, or a very, very low, low, that gave you that spark?
I think if there was one pivotal moment, it was probably in my 20s when I lived in London, and my first book was an accidental big success. You know, I was asked to write a book about the changing role of women. I was 23, and I first wrote back and I said, I can't write, and the publisher wrote back and said, can you have lunch? And he took me to lunch and offered me a small advance, and I wrote The Female Woman, which was published in 26 languages, became this big success. And then I wanted to write a second book about political leadership. And I wrote that book, and I was very proud of it, and I thought, hey, this book is really necessary for the world. And in the process of writing the book, I ran out of the money I had made. And it had been rejected by 36 publishers within 6 months after I finished. I kept sending it out, everybody was rejecting it. So by rejection 36, I really thought, hey, you know what, maybe I've picked the wrong profession. I was very depressed, I had run out of money, and I remember walking down St. James's Street in London, and there I saw Barclays Bank. And something made me walk into the bank, ask to see the bank manager, and ask for a loan. And the bank manager gave it to me. I have no idea why. I had no assets. I had nothing. I was a complete risk. And it made me feel in a very profound way that we can really trust life. It's a little bit like in fairy tales. You know, when you have the hero or the heroine lost in the dark forest, and then the helpful animals come out and they help them out of the forest. Well, in life too, there are helpful animals disguised as human beings. that if you look back on your life, you will find the moments when something very unexpected happened that helped you along the way, often at a very dark moment. And so the bank manager, whose name is Ian Bell, who I send him a Christmas card every year still, he was such a helpful animal for me. I mean, he was a lot more than that, but that was really for me a moment of trust, a moment of believing that, you know, there are people who go through life thinking that life is rigged against them. Right. And no matter what happens, they take it personally. And you can't do that to life. I mean, Rumi, the great Sufi poet that I love, has written a great poem saying that life is rigged in our way. If you believe life is rigged in your way, so whatever happens, you see it as a stepping stone. Turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones. It changes the way you look at life.
Your spark is about empowering women to be comfortable in their own skin and go for what they want. I've heard from you descriptions of the complete woman. So finally, help us to find that balance. I know it's the most important thing to you.
Well, and the reason for that is that I started life as an incredibly self-judgmental person. I wrote a book called On Becoming Fearless, and in that book I wrote about what I call the obnoxious roommate living in my head. We all have it. It's the voice that puts us down. Every morning you wake up, and if you haven't dealt with your obnoxious roommate, she's going to start that negative self-talk. You know, you look in the mirror and she'll say, what happened? You know, did you
do you really want to wear that dress today?
Yeah, do you really want to wear that dress? Oh, these jeans, you know, what happened? Did you throw them in the washing machine by mistake? You know, my obnoxious roommate is incredibly snarky. And I was recently on Stephen Colbert's show, and I told Stephen, I said, Stephen, my obnoxious roommate sounds exactly like you. So I had to learn to deal with that voice. And I dealt with that voice the way you deal with a child. Those of you who are mothers, see Sarah with her 3.5-year-old, you know, when your child throws a temper tantrum, you know, you have a lot of ways of dealing with that. You don't get angry, you don't take it as a fact. You just use sense of humor, you use loving, whatever it takes. I mean, that's how I've started treating my obnoxious roommate voice for years now, and now she only makes guest appearances.
Yes.
So I think the most important thing is to, well, I'm not going to say eliminate, because you know, perfection is not of this world. Everything I'm saying, I'm not doing perfectly, nobody's going to do perfectly. Right. We're talking about aspirations of what we can bring more into our lives. So if we can reduce the self-judgments, we're going to have so much energy freed up. And when I judge myself, what I do is I forgive myself for judging myself. Because forgiveness has to start with ourselves. If we don't forgive ourselves, we'll never really be able to forgive other people. And that's very draining too. Holding grudges is extremely draining. I really like to go to bed every night not holding a grudge against anyone. You know, just the Bible says the evil of today is enough, or let the dead bury the dead, you know, move on. Life is just an incredible adventure. It's always going to be full of challenges. So all that matters is how do we approach them.
Arianna, we have loved going on this adventure with you today. And I think you have taught us how to lean back a little bit, take some time for ourselves. Thank you so very much for joining us.